Hello, welcome back to This Is My Story, your unofficial Hearts podcast. This is something a wee bit different for us. As you will have seen on social media, we have spent the last couple of days interviewing the potential candidates for the Foundation of Hearts, which has been superb. This is a wee mini series with the interviews with all five of them. We have to say straight away that thanks to all five for taking part. It was amazing to get the time to talk to them. Every single one of them impressed us. It was myself and Ando that got the time to sit down and talk to them, and each person brings something unique to the table, has great ideas and great visions for where they want the club to go and how they want the Foundation of Hearts to work. The reason that we reached out to them to do them is because obviously we're Hearts fans, and you know what we're like on the podcast. We're heavily opinionated, and the whole point being fan owned is that we have this vehicle, we have this opportunity where we can vote on and off the candidates that we want, that we think best represent us, best represent the way we want the club to go. And that's why we thought, right, well, we're all big enough to stand outside Tynecastle with our bed sheets telling people we want them off the board. Then we need to, for that big enough to do that, then we need to get involved in the voting process and make sure that the right candidates are put forward. So the AGM for the Foundation of Hearts is on the 16th of December. The Foundation of Hearts messaged all pledgers to tell them of the process, and as of the 12th of October, I think it was, or round about then, basically all of the candidates had to submit their applications to be considered, and the five candidates that went through, that were successful and that go through to the vote, are Andrew Brown, Gerry Mallon, Brian Muir, Graham Robertson and Louise Strutt. Louise Strutt is an existing director and is standing for re-election. So again, you can go onto the Foundation of Hearts website and have a look at, I think they've got individual profiles of basically a little bit about them. You'll have seen bits here and there over social media as to what they're all about. But yeah, if you've got the time, dive on, have a read, see which candidate you like, and then listen and hear what they have to say in this wee mini series. And when you want to vote, and when the voting's open, you would just go to the foundationofhearts.org/election-address-2021. So in no particular order, here are your interviews. Cheers. Hi Gerry, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing top class. Thank you very much, Liam.
Good. Well, again, just want to reiterate how my thanks for joining us on the podcast. Obviously, you're a busy man, so really appreciate you taking the time to chat to us.
No bother.
So, what we've done is we've spoken to all of the candidates in the running for the Foundation of Hearts, and basically we've done the same thing. We'll just have a chat, talk a bit about yourself, your sort of business background and what you bring to the table, your sort of Hearts journey. Talk a bit about the Foundation of Hearts, the idea, where we've came from, where we are, where we're hoping to go with that sort of stuff, and just all round chat in general. Does that sound all right?
Take me wherever you want to go.
That's fine. We will indeed. We'll keep it on the straight and narrow. So just let's dive at the start. So a wee introduction to yourself. What's your background? What's your business acumen? All that sort of stuff.
So yeah, look, I'm originally from Belfast. I came from West Belfast. A long story where my road took me, but had a really good education. Went off to Cambridge University. Went back to Belfast. Worked for a few years for the government. I sold my soul to the capitalist jihad at that stage. Went off to a company called McKinsey, which is this kind of crazy consultancy company which does amazing things corporately, but has all kinds of people who don't like some of the stuff that it did. Came back to run a bank or to work for a bank in Northern Ireland. A few years later, got recruited by another bank in Northern Ireland, and a couple of years later was the chief executive of that bank. So it's a company called Northern Bank. In 2008, I took it over just before the financial crisis. But we did all right in terms of the recovery from that. I ran that for 8 years. RBS then recruited me to run their bank in south of Ireland for a couple of years, which I did before Tesco tempted me to come and run Tesco Bank. And that relocated me to Edinburgh. So I travelled backwards and forwards between Belfast and Edinburgh for a year before it was the right time to move the family. Family all moved over, and Edinburgh is now, I have to say, my hometown for life. Glorious place to be.
It's got a charm that lures you. It lures you in, and it's obviously got a football team that lures you in. Well, the good football team. It's got two, but we only talk about one of them.
It's got a hat full of football teams in descending order, but yeah, there's two that are a bit more prominent. There's obviously and then clearly Edinburgh City.
So yourself, in terms of what sort of aligned you towards the opportunity at the foundation of Hearts, what do you like about it? What sort of ticks the boxes for you, so to speak?
Well, so first of all, Hearts got under my skin. I think that's kind of the prerequisite to be interested in the foundation. And for me coming to Edinburgh, I'd always had an interest in football for a start, but I'd ignored Scottish football completely. And to a large extent, I'd ignored league football in Northern Ireland as well, for the same reason that I ignored Scottish football, which was, if you're in Northern Ireland, Scottish football is a sectarian battle between two teams. You get told on the basis of where you're from in Northern Ireland what team you're allowed to support. So I just ignored that altogether. But when I got here, myself and my son, who was 17 at the time when I started working here, we decided, like, we need to get off the fence. We need to get a football team. There were big Northern Ireland connections with Hearts, and I had connections with the Northern Ireland football team. So I knew Austin McPhee, I knew Connor Washington, and Michael Smith. I know Aaron Hughes. So, all of a sudden, I think Kyle Lafferty might even still have been here at the time that I moved. Although I don't think I ever saw him play for Hearts, but so that was the head start. So we thought, we were neutral, but we knew one team had the head start. So we have to give Hearts a go, and so we paid more attention to it than any other club, and it didn't take long, the more we started to follow Hearts, that we just got completely ensnared by it and completely enmeshed in it. And I don't know exactly what it was. I could kind of point to the time whenever I knew that I was completely a Hearts fan. But we started. I think the first game that I was at was a Kilmarnock game at the end of the 18-19 season, which was very uneventful. But Tynecastle was a nice place to visit. There's it's a kind of multi-generational thing. There's grandparents and there's parents and there's kids. There's a good mix of women and men both together. It's a very family place. There's a sense that it's kind of deeply rooted in the community. And then you start to peel underneath that. It's a good atmosphere as well. But whingy at times.
No way, no us.
To be fair, I think the last couple of years have been plenty to whinge about. But there's been, I could see that. It was, it felt like a nice atmosphere. And then you start to peel behind the skin. You obviously go online. You start to read about the club, and you read about the history, and you read about the ancient history of the club, and that's kind of inspirational. There's interesting stuff there. And then you kind of look at, you look at the kit. That that maroon kit is kind of unique. You have the badge, the crest. I don't think people talk enough about it. It's kind of that's kind of iconic. Now, forget your circular crests. Who goes out there with a heart on their chest? Who can't be inspired by blood doesn't show on a maroon shirt? That just kind of pulls at the heartstrings. Thankfully, I'm glad to report red wine doesn't show on a maroon shirt either. rather fortunate. But then you get into the kind of the more recent history. Well, you go through all the years, you know, the years in between where, you know, trophies and success and near misses and all the rest of it. And the more you drill into it, the more history there is there. But then even the Romanov era, the collapse of the club, the rescue by the fans, and you know, now culminating in the foundation being the owner of the club. Like, you know, that's kind of the kind of thing that captures your imagination. And then of course there was the accidental purchase for Logan Roy as well. That was, you know, again, you that's kind of when you're sitting there watching Succession, actually as a big Succession fan, and that kind of pops up, you think, what the fuck? Do you know, this is actually this. So there's messages for me here. The point that I became aware that I was a proper Hearts fan, or myself and my son, was, you know, Daniel Stendel's first game that we went to, and when they lost, when we lost, I was gutted, and at that stage I realized, okay, well, you actually, you know, you're not just here for the crack. You're not just here because you can walk to the ground. Actually, you know, you do actually. You've got some emotional capital invested in this place, and then so we actually, not long after that, we bought the half season tickets to see Boise's debut against Rangers, and we were kind of all in at that stage. So obviously that season was cut short, and then the next season in the championship was kind of traumatic in the middle with the Brora result and Queen of the South and all the rest. And by that stage I was already, you know, we were all in lockdown, and I was wasting hours and hours going down the rabbit hole, social media and Jumpers Kickback and all that.
Yeah.
And I could see the grief that the foundation directors were getting. So
you signed me up.
Well, no, actually, it was it. Well, what I did do was I reached out to Stuart Wallace at that stage, because I could see his name mentioned, not exactly lovingly, in dispatches on Kickback, and I thought, you know, these guys are getting grief, and I just sent them a message, I suppose, of solidarity more than anything else, because of my involvement with Northern Ireland. I'd seen all, you know, all the noise and the grief and all the rest of it. I had my own perspective on the role that you have to play if you're in that kind of gig, and how you have to deal with it. And I was just encouraging him to kind of stick with it and to not ignore the sentiment, but observe the sentiment rather than be overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
And I said, look, if I could be of any help, then give me a shout. So I guess we stayed in dialogue over the course of several months, and Stuart eventually gave me a shout a few months ago, just to say, look, there might be an opportunity. We're thinking about the succession on the board. We're thinking about some board appointments and opportunities, and would you like to come and have a chat about it? Which I did, and that's culminated in me finding myself in this lovely podcast.
In this situation.
Yeah.
I know. Well, you've picked a good season to sum up being a Hearts fan. You started in that season where we were ultimately demoted, but when you look through that season, we only managed to beat Rangers, Aberdeen and Hibs. And I think there's an emotional roller coaster for you right there. You beat one of the best teams in the league, your rivals, and the team that you challenge to be the third biggest, but can't beat Livingston, Hamilton, Ross County, Kilmarnock, or whatever. If it was anything was going to ensnare you in the life that is supporting Hearts, then you picked the season.
The thing that I still can't get my head around in that year is there were three different managers. If you include Austin McPhee, and Daniel Stendel is the one who gets love, and he had better results. I know he had the team playing a little bit more on the front foot, and people think that his opportunity was cut short. He did have a cracking song, but apart from that, you know, there wasn't much difference really, was it?
But I loved Daniel Stendel. a pine for Daniel Stendhal. I go
Oh,
to bed at night thinking about Daniel Stendhal.
have a chat with some boys from Nancy and see if you share the love.
Okay, I know. You're hoping, you're like that, watching the results coming in, say, please be a success at the next one. But again, that time at Hearts, to be honest, I just think we were in a. This is the thing that excites me the most just now about the Foundation of Hearts, and one of the reasons why I reached out to say I'd like to talk to everybody that was potentially, like, if we could get an interview or something for the candidates, it would be great, because I feel like for the first time in a long time as a football club, we're at a point where we can be heads up. You know, we've been very good at the crisis management. We've done all the milestones of save the club, establish the Foundation of Hearts, lay the foundation, get the share initiative done and the handover. You've seen the financial results that we've just there. Our sort of relationship with corporate business and Edinburgh business and big business, it's never been stronger. You know, and now I feel like we've got a real opportunity for the first time in a long, long time to be heads up, targeted, strategic. Where do we want to take this? Because right now, the road's open. You know, before we've had loads of blocks. Now we can be like, right, let's start actually moving the club forward. And that's why I wanted to talk to everybody right now, because this, out of every, I know that the Foundation of Hearts have had a few elections over the years or whatever, but this is the one for me that I feel has the most potential to really start to see what the Foundation of Hearts could be.
So jump some thoughts from me in terms of the foundation and all the rest of it. So look, first of all, let's talk about the club, because in football you've got this there's this really strong correlation between income and success on the whole, right? In league football in particular. So you know, you can see from that we should have a clear position, sustainable position as third in Scotland. You know, kind of really strongly should be in Europe every year and all the rest of it. That should be an unassailable position on the basis of our income and our support, if we do it right. The problem with football, and the reason why that always deviates, is that football clubs aren't always run particularly well, and they bounce up and down, and things don't always fall the way that you expect them to. But generally, over the long term, that's the way that it works. I think the opportunity for us now is to make sure that we run sensibly, and that we run for the long term, and that we run sustainably. And I think we've got the ownership model now that actually allows that sustainability to be put into place, because you don't have an oligarch or a nutcase or people who think they're fans but actually are looking to kind of indulge their egos or whatever for the short term, or people who are prepared to sacrifice the long term of the club for short term success, and do things which have got no sustainable basis or are a massive risk. In my view, the club therefore needs to be run by people who are doing, and we need to be given the space to be able to do that for the long term, to make sensible decisions, insulated from the short term emotional reaction which we all have as supporters. So, you know, if the club was run by a kind of a show of hands in the diggers, then the manager could be fired 4 times a season.
Yeah.
You'd have half the squad transfer listed depending on their performance in the last 15 minutes of the last game, whatever. So, and that's completely natural. We all react like that. But people need to make sensible decisions. Football people need to make sensible decisions informed by the budgets and all the rest of it. So the foundation I see as now, if it's all of us with our emotional attachment to the club and our emotional reactions are putting in money every month, I think we need a number of things. We need to understand what the long-term goals of the club are. We need to understand that the money that we're putting in is being used sensibly, and we can see that there are objectives and hurdles that we're working for. And I guess up to the stage where the share transfer happened, we could all see what that goal was, and the goal was the share transfer from Bidco to the foundation that happened now. So what's the next objective? What are we after now? I think, but by the same token, while we're all putting that in, we'll see that objective. I think it's reasonable for an expectation that now, if you've got a fan-owned club, that the fans have an opinion, and that opinion can be heard. And I think, I think the whole Brora situation and the reaction to the foundation board members that I observed is probably an indication that, you know, people have a reasonable, people who are putting in money every week or every month have got a reasonable expectation that their voice will be heard and will be listened to and be taken on board. And it doesn't have to be kind of immediately acted on. You need that buffer. To me, the foundation is the buffer between the kind of instant reaction of the pledgers, not the fans as a whole, but the pledgers, because after all, they're the people that who have paid for the right to have an opinion. Everybody else in the terraces can shout or say what they want or tweet whatever they want, but it's just noise. But the people who are putting in money, actually, there's big legitimacy in terms of what they're saying, and but it's up to the foundation to hear that, to listen to it, to filter it, to express it to the board, but then also I think there's an obligation of the foundation directors to kind of respond or react to that. So the board the club will be free to make its own decisions, and the foundation has got its own decisions to make, which will be around the aligning with the long-term objectives of the club, reappointing board members, appointing new board members, and you've got to get off the fence at that stage and say so and so has done a good job, deserves another 3 years. We think this is the right project. We think this is going in the right direction. And I think I've talked to a lot of people about the foundation and where it's going, and I guess the more people you talk to, the more opinions you get. But generally speaking, there's a consensus that there's an opportunity for a really good and clear dialogue between the foundation and its pledgers, foundation board and its pledgers, around where the club's going, what we need to do, and the decisions that we make together. And there's an acceptance that not everybody's going to agree with every decision, but you have to give the board of the club the space to make those decisions sensibly and time to see whether or not those were sensible decisions. And then if they turn out not to be right, then you make the appropriate reaction.
Yeah, and I think there's been some sort of blurred lines, which is natural with the sort of relationship we have. We're fan owned, we're not fan run. Like you said there, it's not a case of 8,700 people send an email in to say get Robbie sacked tomorrow because Boyce doesn't start. That is never going to be like that. And to be honest, it's never been sold to us as that. The foundation have always been transparent from the start that it's never going to be that. What it is it's a safeguard to make sure that we don't end up with a nutcase or someone's plaything again or whatever. It's a long-term thing. And this is why, again, when I said that I find at this point in time or this moment in time is the most exciting in terms of the Foundation of Hearts, because it's almost the sky's the limit type thing now, right? Where do we want to go? Where do we want to go? We've fought all our fights that we need to fight. We're financially stable in terms of income versus revenue and all that sort of stuff. You only have to look at some of the other clubs in Scotland's their money sheets to see, well, actually we're already on a good advantage over them. So how do we press that home?
100%. I agree with you on that, and I do think we're definitely well set to kind of be the club that has stability, long-term vision, and plots a really stable course through all the noise and ups and downs and lunacy that lots of others go through. That we stick to our guns. We've got a clear long-term strategy and we develop in the right way. Yeah,
and I think it's natural to go back to the Brora point because it was a moment in time for Hearts. It was a shock result. It was an embarrassing result, and we get that. But I always try and temper that moment. And we were the nutcases in there too, man. Our podcast and our noise, we were making noise as well. But we always try and say, take a step back to look where we are. And what I find is that eruption of emotion at that point, I think, was a culmination of loads of things. COVID shut the season down when we weren't doing well. Managers came, didn't get a reaction. There was noise around the furlough scheme with the players and certain players not wanting to accept it, and then we couldn't go to the games anymore, and then we had the demotion and the fight in the courts and all of that, and it just felt like we'd kind of moved on. We got united behind the club with its court fight. Then we started to realise that we're in a league we shouldn't have been in. We're playing against teams that, on paper, we should be comfortably beaten, and that wasn't always the case. I just think that shouldn't ever be a barometer for how fans will react to poor performances. For me, maybe I'm got my head in the sky and or whatever, but I don't think that's a load of people that we've spoken to have always referred back to the Brora game as a sort of an outpouring of emotion, but I don't think that is something that we could ever like judge the foundation on. I don't think the fans will react like that. For example, say we lose tomorrow, we lose next week or whatever. I don't see waves of people cancelling their pledges in a sort of manoeuvre to force the board to sack someone. Do you know what I mean? I think it was a moment in time that just happened to come to a head, and everybody went a bit mental, and everybody calmed down again and went, well, actually, let's get behind the long-term future, and or the long-term plan for the club, because that's what the next step is. We were dead lucky for the podcast. We were invited to the Heart and Soul Day, the transfer of the shares, and one of the things I got the opportunity to talk to Anne Budge. I got the opportunity to talk to Andrew McKinlay and Stuart Wallace, Gary Halliday. And I went and found a quote from our old chairman, Chris Robinson, who to the shareholders meeting said that basically the club will die if we stay at Tynecastle. The club will be dead if we stay here. We have to move. There's no life. There's no commercial possibility of the club staying here. We can't redevelop Tynecastle. We've exhausted all avenues of revenue within the local community. We have to move. And to be sitting in the brand new stadium in the changing room as a part owner of the football club, you just think, wow, how did we? You couldn't tell that story. Do you? If you were sitting with a Hollywood director and sat and told them that story, you would be like, nah, it's nonsense. Do you know what I mean? It's a crazy story.
It is unbelievable, and it's kind of crazy that it hasn't. Well, I can kind of understand why it hasn't happened in other places. Why the model hasn't spread, because it's all down to valuations. But it's kind of sad that the model hasn't spread to other places, because it offers a sustainable future for football clubs that gives a realistic basis for their long-term financial stability, so long as you retain the goodwill of the people who support.
Yeah, especially I think Hearts have been dead lucky that our journey towards fan ownership has coincided with the mess that Rangers were in. The fact that we could see that no white knight was coming over the horizon to save Rangers whilst we're on the same journey kind of was a call to arms to us to be like, well, actually, if no one's going to save Rangers, then who's going to come in and save us type thing, which has been great. But we also have, why I think we're still as, the Foundation of Hearts is still as prominent within the fan base now, is you have the English Premier League and you see the sort of further and further away the clubs come from their actual fan base. Now, today, we're talking Chelsea have quadrupled the price for the top tier of the West Stand to something like £1,400 a season for a season ticket. And you think that's crazy. We are here now, and basically we have the opportunity to not dictate, but be a part of and have our voice heard for how we want the club to go forward. That's, like you say, I don't understand. I do, but I don't understand how it hasn't become the norm for football clubs almost.
Well, the key, I think, was the buying price. So I think that the people who put together the foundation and Bidco at the time and worked really hard to get the deal over the line got a really great price for the club. I saw all the chat about Newcastle United supporters being inspired to try and emulate the Foundation of Hearts, but they were ever so slightly outbid by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So I think the purchase price was probably something even beyond the the deep pockets of the Geordie fans. So I think you almost need the club to be on the edge of disappearing from existence before it's even feasible, you know.
Yeah, again, like it's one of those things, and you also need somebody that's as sort of heart-centric as Anne Budge has been. You know, when you think of owners of football clubs all over the world, Anne Budge has delivered and stood to her promise of everything that she said she would. You know, how many football club owners would say, right, I'll give you the money, you pay me back, and then you can have the club. You know, as soon as you get in and you see the books and start to think, oh, I could make some money here. You know, most owners are psychopaths. You know what I mean? They'd be like, I'm just going to stay in place now.
There's a few things about Hearts that kind of puzzle me, and in terms of fan sentiment, that, you know, maybe only 3 years into my journey, I haven't maybe kind of got on the wavelength of exactly what everybody's thinking. I think I'm kind of 90% there, but the lack of love for Robbie Nielsen is kind of one of them. The Daniel Stendel obsession is that you just talked about is another one, and then the third is the kind of the divided emotions towards Anne Budge. I think she's put a huge amount of herself into. I mean, I think the commercial deal that she did was you know, probably a pretty good one for her, but, you know, sensibly speaking, in commercial terms, if any of us were in that position, you'd probably try and protect your position. But it's inarguable that she has given a huge amount of herself to the club over the course of the years. And if you think of that, you know, the questions about making right decisions for the long term, well, if you look at where we are now, it's kind of, you know, you can't really question the fact that mostly the right calls were made over a sustained period of time.
Yeah, the Anne Budge suffers from something that you think should be a stick that you should never be able to beat her with, considering what we had with Chris Robinson and what we had with Vladimir Romanov. And probably the biggest stick to beat her is she's honest. She's been honest from the start, and sometimes that honesty and transparency is what people use to beat her. You know, if we're doing poor on the park and she's not sacked the manager, it's because she says so openly and willingly in the press that she's not a football person. Great, beat her up. That's why we didn't sack Robbie, or that's why we've made bad football decisions, because she's self-declared not a football person, if you know what I mean. And you think, well, we've had an owner that told us that don't worry about the debt. You know what I mean? I'll keep the debt and you don't have to pay me back, and we'll be absolutely brilliant. And then he left, and we never seen him, and players only getting paid. And I think it is a strange one. I often look at the relationship. I won't get into Robbie and Daniel because that's fan opinion. The Anne Budge one is something that will always, it does baffle me as well as a Hearts fan. It does.
Well, most people who run football clubs aren't football people. You know, people who run football teams are football people, but the people who run football clubs tend to be business people, because if you have somebody who's a football person running a football club, you're running business difficulties pretty quickly. So you know, the fans and business people don't always see eye to eye, but somehow you've got to make the budget balance, you know.
Well, and I've said before, you just have to look at the relationships that Hearts have away from football now, in amongst the community, in the corporate world of Edinburgh as well. They're happy to deal with Hearts. That wasn't always the case. You know, you have financial institutions or investment centres all around you. They wouldn't touch you with a barge pole because of our reputation before, whereas now I think the club have went huge strides to bridge those gaps. Do you know what I mean? Which is great. So what's your vision for the future for the Foundation of Hearts? Where do you see it? Where do you see the potential?
So look, I think we're in a completely unique position as a football club. I don't think clearly the largest fan-owned club in the UK, and I think there is a when you look at the three legs of the kind of the Heart of Midlothian, which is the football team, the foundation, and Big Hearts, I think there's an opportunity to kind of be an unassailable force in terms of, you know, kind of capturing the kind of the soul of Edinburgh. You know, being in the community, being of the community, being owned by the community, and representing the community and giving back pride. We're now in a position where nobody's looking for a return from Hearts. Nobody's looking to turn a quick buck from it. It's all about giving pride and giving hope to the community and the people of Edinburgh and the people that support it. And I think the more that we can kind of truly be part of the community and represent the people in it, the greater that kind of momentum becomes unstoppable. If we keep sensible people making the decisions and we make the right decisions for the long term, forget about all the short term ups and downs and all the rest of it, make those right long term decisions, which includes making sure that we bring young players through from an early age, making sure that we don't overspend our budgets, making sure that we're respectful to the people in the places where we live, making sure that we have got kind of really clear engagement and are very open and honest with everybody that we're dealing with. I think that puts Hearts in an enormously strong position.
I agree. Like I said, I think this is the most potential and sort of the most excitement that we've had at boardroom level that wasn't a Lithuanian bank or selling the club or whatever. It's the most exciting outlook that we've had, or the most prosperous outlook that we've had for a long time. So that's good. And obviously we'll end it with the fact that tomorrow we've sold nearly 4,000 tickets for Motherwell, and that sort of the opportunity of, if the product on the park matches the ambition of the foundation and where the club want to go, then it's, the club is a massive, massive force in Scottish football, isn't it? It's outrageous.
So that's a new figure for me, nearly 4,000. That's extraordinary. I'm going with my son on the Porty Hearts bus. Nice. I've got my bag of cans packed.
Yeah, Saturday's about the boys and bags of cans.
Yeah, that's it. I'm ready for that.
Yeah, we're leaving from Benson's. We live in Livingston, but there's no direct train tomorrow, which makes that figure of how many tickets we've sold even more impressive. You can't get the train direct to Motherwell. So, but again, it's just, that's the one thing I've liked the most about Joe Savage and Andrew McKinley when we spoke to them as well, is their ambitions aren't just to sort of fit in. Let's finish top 6 and see where we take it. They've got real ambition for the club to be more than that, because they can see the scope that we're a big club, and I liked Joe Savage when I've heard him talk and the same with Robbie as well, when Robbie speaks as well. When players come here, they need to adapt to the fact that it's a massive football club. We got 14,000 season ticket holders. We'll take 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 away fans everywhere you go, and every week, or pretty much every week, you're expected to win, and that's massive.
Yeah. So a pal of mine runs a championship club, and I was chatting to him last week, an English championship club, about the kind of the number of fans that they get in and so they average about 18,000 of a gate, and I'm thinking, the championship in England is seen as a really big deal. And that's sort of kicking the arse off what we're averaging week in, week out as well. We as Ron Burgundy we almost said, actually we're kind of a big deal.
Well, I never thought we would be ending it on a Ron Burgundy quote, but you've made my night. So we're not even going to pretend we can go anywhere for you. Gerry, thanks a lot for your time. It's been amazing talking to you.
No problem, Liam.